please welcome to the stage General Manager, Data Systems Group, Rohan Kumar.
All right. Well, thank you. Before we get started, I just want to show of hands and maybe some screams for how many of you love SQL Server? Oh, great. Thank you. So welcome to Microsoft Ignite and the Microsoft Data Estate. My name is Rohan Kumar, and I'm the General Manager of the Database Systems Group. You know, I'm guessing most of you are here today because you're the ones in charge of making magic happen in your organizations. Business owners come to you with creative ideas that they expect you to wave a magic wand over to bring to life. You got to where you are because you indeed have magic in you. You're pretty darn good, but deep down inside, you know what you can do is bounded by what your data estate can enable you to do. That's why I'm really excited to share with you some of the groundbreaking new investments that Microsoft is making in our data platform. With these strategic advancements, our hope is that we can help you unleash the power of your data and bring those creative ideas to life and break down the barriers that have held you back. I'm confident that you'll at least get a few more magic tricks after today's session that you can take back to your organizations and get those creative ideas to life. First things first, the world is changing. Let's talk about how that change is going to impact your business and you. You know, ever since the time of fire and wheel, technological advancements have largely driven changes in behavior and expectations. Disruptive innovation essentially not only changes the game, it also sometimes changes the very objective of the game that is being played. You know, all of us want to create disruption that creates new customer realities, new customer choice, new customer value, and also creating a distinct advantage for organizations. But to make this disruption happen, it is very important to really carefully look at the technology trends and figure out which technology trends do we really care about. Which ones do we invest in? Which ones do we take forward? At Microsoft, we've identified 3 technology trends that we believe will be the foundation of disruptions in the future. The first one is the astronomical explosion of data. By 2020, the amount of data, the total amount of data volume in the world is expected to exceed 44 zettabytes. Just think about that. That's 4 times the overall data volume, which is already going so fast today. Think about if you can harness the intelligence from this volume of data, how that could change the game for your business. The second trend, which is already extremely popular with a lot of enterprises like yourselves, is the adoption of the public cloud. 4 out of the 5 companies now invest in public cloud infrastructure over on-premises or private cloud infrastructure. Public cloud is critical if you want to handle the volumes of data that I just spoke about. Public cloud is important because it helps you invest in the future without anchoring you to the past. It essentially allows organizations to be nimble in the face of change. And finally, the third major trend that we believe is going to help or create disruptions in business models and organizations is artificial intelligence. AI is no longer just a buzzword, but a boardroom word. A lot of the boardroom conversations go as follows. How do we leverage AI? What can it do for us? How do we make the most of it? AI is very critical because it is really how you're going to gain intelligence and make decisions based on all this volume of data that you've collected in your cloud environment. It is not just a passing phase. It's really the fundamental pillar on which we will see organizations build long-term business success. Well, so you must be thinking, enough of theory. How does this all work? What we believe is it's not cloud, AI, and the astronomical explosion of data is not just a list of line items that you go by one at a time. truly, when you think about digital transformations that organizations need to go through, it's really about the three of them working fluidly and working well together in support of the business. That's what we really believe. Now let's take a look at some facts. Organizations that harness data and cloud and AI outperform. There was Keystone Research conducted a survey and some research, principal research, where they essentially found that companies and organizations like yourselves, which invest in their data platform, which significantly invest in their data platform and be at the cutting edge, vastly outperform companies which do not do that or are in the bottom quartile of their investments. For example, the ones in the top are nearly doubling their operating margin and have hundreds of millions of dollars of additional revenue. This is just through research. Now, investments in the data platform by themselves don't produce revenue. They lead to innovation, which will help drive revenue and profitability, which leads me to my second point, that companies who invest in the cloud, the companies who invest in managing their data, and companies who invest in harnessing intelligence through AI will out-innovate their competition. We've seen this with 3 companies who've bet on the Azure data platform. Some of you may have heard of Jet.com. It's an online marketplace that's significantly disrupting the retail market by essentially providing value in real time, by doing a lot of intelligent analysis and providing value to their customers in real time. And this value essentially saving them hundreds and thousands of dollars. So that's really the disruption they're creating, again, by betting on cloud, AI, and data. DocuSign is changing the game in their field. You know, legal contracts that would take months to go through all the paperwork and bureaucracy, now finish within hours by people just sitting in front of their computers. Just think about that. Just think about the possibility of the efficiencies such innovations create. That's what DocuSign's doing. And finally, Honeywell essentially has removed the term home out of the home automation. They've built this IoT app which allows their consumers to control their temperature from wherever they are, their home temperature. That's just a start. Look at where they're going to go with their IoT app. And the app also sort of collects a lot of good information and sends it back to Honeywell that they can look at to improve their experiences for their consumers. Now, all these 3 companies which are disrupting their businesses essentially have bet on the cutting-edge Microsoft data platform, both in the public cloud and on-prem. Which brings me to my final point. All the companies who out-innovate and outperform rely on a modern data estate. This is extremely critical. Now you may be asking, what is the modern data estate? The modern data estate essentially is a very, very simple concept. It essentially allows data to be accepted from any source, whether it's structured, unstructured, IoT, sensor, big data, small, doesn't matter. It's basically super easy. It just accepts data from any source. The other thing, it functions across on-premises and the public cloud to create a truly hybrid estate that essentially hides all the differences from the application and the infrastructure management. Just by a show of hands, how many of you think you are all in the public cloud and have nothing on-prem? 0. How many of you believe you're going to have a hybrid estate where you're going to have some data on-prem, maybe some data in the public cloud, and you expect the modern data estate that you bet on to actually handle that very gracefully and very efficiently? Almost all of you. And that proves the point. Hybrid, we deeply believe, and we've always believed this in Azure and Microsoft Data Platform, is the way of the future. And finally, the modern data estate offers exactly what you need. It offers operational databases, both relational, non-relational, multimodal. They offer data warehouses. They offer data lakes. And finally, they offer data integration pipelines that seamlessly stitch all these things together where you want it, when you want it, and as you want it. Now, at Microsoft, we also know that it's not just about creating great technology. It's actually really not about that. The main focus that we have as we are reimagining the modern data estate is really about taking the technology out of your way so you can intuitively use it to harness the value out of your data and create business value for your organization. That's the reason why we've taken on the challenge of reimagining the modern data estate. It's not just a bunch of isolated products and technologies that don't connect with each other anymore. For us, the modern data estate is really a design that seamlessly connects all the offerings, the operational databases, data warehouses, data lakes, data integration pipelines, both on-premise and in the public cloud, wherever you are, to create an experience for you which is magical. The three key principles that drive our innovation that we do in the modern data estate are the ability to reason over data anywhere. This is extremely critical. You know, all the AI, all the machine learning, all the intelligence has to work seamlessly across your applications wherever your data lives. It's not about all this has to only work in the public cloud, because that doesn't solve the problem for you. Your data is distributed everywhere, like we just said. And the way we are thinking about our modern data estate and the investments we make is really when you build an intelligent app, then the choice of deployment is really completely up to you. And the same code or the same engineering investments that you make are broadly applicable across the board with no changes. That's a key principle, being able to build intelligent apps that reason over data anywhere it lives. The second principle that we hold very dearly is the flexibility of choice. When we talk about choice, it's about choice of the infrastructure, the platform itself, whether you want to run on Windows, whether you want to run on Linux, you want to run on Docker, you want to orchestrate everything through Kubernetes, whatever, right? That flexibility of choice on an infrastructure is very important. The other part is flexibility of choice as it comes to the developer tools and languages. You know, if you're a .NET developer, great, we have a great offering for you. If you're a Java developer, if you're a Node developer, PHP, Ruby on Rails, we have made very strategic investments in all our client drivers, whether it's from Microsoft stack or outside of Microsoft, to work seamlessly against the products in our data estate. So that's a key principle. And finally, we want to be the industry leader in security and performance. We want to have the most secure data platform, both on-premises and in the public cloud, and the fastest data platform, because speeds and feeds, response times, latency, throughput, all these core primitives is something that's very, very important as you start building your applications. So those things is how we believe our modern data estate is going to get built and be differentiated. And we truly believe that these things essentially are helping us prepare the modern data estate for the next 15 to 20 years. Now, in the rest of the presentation, I'm going to walk through some of the new groundbreaking innovation that we've done and the announcements that we'd like to make across all our products and services. So let's get going. The first one, announcing, you heard this morning, Scott announced, SQL Server 2017 is now going to be generally available starting 2nd of October on Linux, on Docker, on Windows Server, orchestrated by Kubernetes and the choice that you have. All right, a little bit more excitement over there. This is, can you imagine? SQL Server for 25 years has been a Windows-only database. You know, the feedback that we got from a lot of our customers is they love SQL, right? They love the fact that we've enabled lots and lots of programming languages, like I just said, Java, PHP, Node, et cetera, to work against SQL Server. The only thing that was limiting was the choice of the platform. And with SQL Server 2017, we've actually fixed that. Super excited. So now if you want to build an intelligent app, you have the choice of your language, you have the choice of your platform, and now you can pick your favorite database, SQL Server. That's fantastic. You know, the momentum in this release, if you guys remember, we made SQL Server 2016 generally available on June 1st, 2016. So it's been 15, 16 months since then. And you know, for those of you who've been with us on the SQL Server journey for a while, you know, this is the fastest release, major release that we've ever done. To top that, actually having it on multi-platforms, we had to significantly redo our engineering systems, right? You know, going from just a single Windows platform to supporting multiple flavors of Linux. We support Red Hat, we support Ubuntu, you know, we support SUSE, all of them. And containerized environments and all the goodness that comes with it. And the response we've seen, because we've made ourselves available from the Linux community, has been amazing. 2+ million Docker pulls. This by far, I've been with the SQL product line for several years now, and this has by far been the most heavily adopted preview releases in the history of SQL Server. With SQL Server 2016, we thought we broke significant ground by shipping monthly community technology previews. We did the same thing, but just the fact that we opened up so many new channels, the containerized environments drove a lot of adoption. So really, really excited about that. And even from some of our early adopters, and you'll hear from one of them shortly, the power of what they're able to do all the way from performance and scale and security, which were just the bread and butter of how SQL Server got built, but even in the CI/CD pipelines, how the game is being changed with SQL Server is fantastic to see. Now let's there's a lot of value in SQL Server 2017 just beyond the fact that it now is a multi-platform database. First of all, we've continued the tradition. With every release of SQL Server, we make significant investments to improve performance and scale as the hardware advances. And I'm super excited to announce that even with SQL Server 2017, based on industry standard benchmarks like TPC-E, TPC-H, we are the #1 database for operational workloads. We are the #1 database for data warehouse and analytic workloads. Basically, SQL Server is the fastest database on the planet, period. And this is not just us saying it. This is based on industry standard benchmarks. SQL Server 2017 is also the most secure database on the planet. Right? Again, this is continuing the tradition of SQL Server where we take security, compliance, and privacy very, very seriously. According to the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, which tracks all the security vulnerabilities across various databases, you can see that in the graph where we have the smallest number of vulnerabilities. Now, why is this important? Of course, every time you run into some security vulnerability, then there's a lot of effort that goes in, as you all know, in enterprises to go patch and make sure that that doesn't become into a crisis like we've seen recently. SQL Server 2017 now is the only commercial database that actually supports deep integration with artificial intelligence. What does that mean? We built this extensibility architecture with SQL Server 2016 that allowed us to host R, which is a very, very popular language for data scientists. There's another language, Python, which is equally popular among the data scientists, especially the ones that actually invest in deep learning. And we've made Python natively executable and hostable without moving the data outside of SQL Server. So that's great. The end-to-end mobile BI device on any device, the BI, tooling, etc., Power BI, now Power BI reports through reporting services, all's built in to the SQL Server license. And the cost differential, if you compare it to some of our competitors, is pretty astronomical. So that's great. And finally, with all this value, the key thing that actually we feel very, very excited about is the fact that we're giving you the platform of choice, the developer tools of choice, the administrative tools of choice. So great performance, fantastic security. We're innovating on the AI side by building that much, much closer to the platform to help you build intelligent applications. BI is included, on any device in the price that we sell SQL Server. All this great value available across platforms, developer tools, and administrative tools of your choice. All of this great value at 1/10 of cost of Oracle. Just think about that. It's pretty amazing. All right, moving forward. So what are the specific new features that we've released in the data platform, SQL Server 2017? The first one is the support for graph data and queries. Now, there is a lot of data that's interconnected through foreign key relationships, as you already know. Sometimes it is really hard to build just a relational model that allows you to capture those deep insights. With graph data and queries, we've created language and query processing extensions that make it very easy, very intuitive for a developer to think about gaining insights out of these deep relationships. It could be CRM data, and you'll hear about that as well. And so we're very, very excited. This is the first step we've taken and we believe it's a really solid one, which is enabling lots and lots of new scenarios for customers whose data is already inside SQL Server. So I encourage you to take a look at that. The other one, which I just spoke about, is advanced machine learning. We already had R, now we've added Python. Now, why is Python important? Right? Of course, it's a very popular language with the data scientists. But when you think about deep learning, part of the artificial intelligence, there is a lot of work being done by companies like Microsoft, Google, Facebook. You know, Microsoft has this deep learning library called Cognitive Toolkit, or CNTK. Google has their own called TensorFlow, and Facebook has come up with its own called Caffe. The advantage with these libraries is they're optimized to run on GPUs, right? Their workloads essentially are optimized to do the processing on GPUs. Now, by enabling Python to natively run inside SQL Server, where you don't really have to move the data out, you can build all these deep learning applications by binding your Python libraries to these deep learning libraries from Microsoft, Google, Facebook, et cetera. There'll be a ton of innovation in this space, and we've built the infrastructure to enable you to build applications that takes advantage of it. That's amazing. And it's great for the data scientists and the data engineers because they don't have to remove the data outside of the database, which creates a lot of problems around compliance, security, you know, the making decisions in real time becomes really hard if you have to move the data outside the database. So the extensibility architecture that we've built that enables Python is, again, it's pretty groundbreaking in terms of where we started. Now, you can imagine, you know, as we sort of keep increasing the innovation over here, over the next 5 to 10 years, you can see a lot of disruption. But the good news is you've already bet on SQL, and we are building the platform for the future. It's fantastic. Native T-SQL scoring. Now, this is a really, really nice addition. You know, so we released R with SQL Server 2016. And one of the things we've learned is we've observed our customers who are using this feature to figure out how to score in a highly performant manner. We've taken the most common cases of prediction, and instead of making them into R scripts, we've created T-SQL store procedures that can be called directly from the application. And you'll see that in one of the upcoming demos. So what that does is the scoring part, which essentially allows you to make the real-time decisions. Like, for example, Jet.com is scoring to figure out, you know, what they need to sort of offer their customers to reduce the cost. All that's going to happen in milliseconds. It significantly changes the game in terms of how real-time your app can be. And finally, adaptive query processing and automatic plan correction. How many of you have used the query data store feature in SQL Server 2016 to save your plans, execution plans? All right, I see a few hands. You know, so this is a natural extension to that. So what we did with 2016 was essentially allowed you to save the plan. So if for whatever reason, you know, your schema changes happened, et cetera, and then your query performance degraded, then you could force the plan back. Now, we've essentially battle-tested this feature in Azure SQL Database, and I'll talk about that in a second. And now we feel confident where you can turn this feature on by default and say, anytime my query regresses, just force the previous execution plan that is stored in QDS. It's a great benefit if you're a database administrator. And finally, adaptive query processing. You know, when we were discussing the slides, my buddy JG told me, man, maybe this audience is not that technical, so you should sort of be. So how many of you consider yourself to be technical people? See, JG, there are a lot of people, so let me go into the details. So, you know, all major databases have essentially a cost-based optimizer. So what that means is whenever there's a decision to be made about generating the query plan, it looks at approximately how much I/O would need to happen, how much of the memory broker reservation would need to happen, cores, et cetera, to essentially make sure the optimal number of resources are reserved for the query. You know, sometimes the optimizer makes a mistake, but so far, it's never corrected itself. Even if it realizes that it has made a mistake, it's never corrected itself. And for the first time, we've taken the initial step where on the memory allocation, if as the execution of the query proceeds, if we realize, the optimizer realizes that it had made a mistake, then it's able to adjust that. You know, so now for very, very long-running data warehouse queries, this is a significant advantage, right? Where, you know, we've seen where some of the queries have gone down from like 12 hours of execution time to 4 hours, right, because of the changes. And this is the first step we've taken towards making our query optimizer way more intelligent. As you can imagine, It's an area where we continue to invest in because as the data volumes grow, as SQL, the data platform, starts dealing with very, very large amounts of data with very distinct kinds of storage and I/O systems, persistent memory, et cetera, we will need to sort of add such intelligence where the query optimizer can correct if it realizes that some of the decisions it made were not ideal. So great, lots and lots of good new features. There's lots of little items that I haven't even spoken about. We've made good improvements to column store, language extensions, et cetera, and I encourage you to take a look at that. Let's, at this point, I'd like to play this video which talks about how one of the companies that we've partnered with, DV01, realized how SQL Server running on Linux can benefit them given the challenges that we were facing. Can we please play the video, please?
Bear Stearns shares are down 90% this morning, and it's not just Bear, pretty much every
Working at Bear Stearns in 2008 during the mortgage meltdown was really an eye-opening experience for me because it was clear that even one of the largest investment banks at the time didn't have much transparency at all into how much they owned or even what those assets consisted of. DV01 brings institutional investors transparency into the consumer lending markets, handling everything from data normalization, data management, to reporting and analytics end to end.
We started out small on AWS and RDS, and just like most startups, we ran into a lot of scaling challenges. Our move into SQL Server 2017 on Linux was a controversial one. Our engineers came from an open source background, and we're an open source shop. Switching to SQL Server was a game changer for us because the latency went from tens of seconds down to less than 1 or 2 seconds for most of our queries.
Starting a company is tough. There's a million things that we have to worry about, but it's been really comforting to have Microsoft in our corner. There's many things that contributed to the financial crisis, but we definitely believe that lack of transparency for investors was a big one and a problem that we're tackling head on with DV01.
Thank you. Please join me in welcoming Dean Chen, VP of Engineering at DV01. Welcome, Dean. Hey, so Dean, that was a great story. Can you tell us a little bit more about the problem you're trying to solve?
Yeah, sure. So DV01 works with some of the world's leading investment banks and hedge funds. We're doing our part to prevent the next financial crisis through advanced quantitative analytics and reporting. So our platform needs to be fast and scalable. We initially built our product off of Amazon Redshift and Postgres. However, we quickly realized that wasn't sustainable as our client base grew and as our queries became more complex. At one point, we were spending 70% of engineering time just optimizing or troubleshooting database queries.
So this sounds like a real problem. How did moving to SQL Server help?
Yeah, so after exploring a lot of analytical databases, we migrated to SQL Server 2016 on Azure virtual machines. SQL Server gave us the performance and scalability needed to handle our rapid growth, reducing those complex analytical queries from more than 30 seconds to just 1 to 2 seconds, and reducing data management overhead by 90%. So when Microsoft gave us a preview to 2017, our engineers were thrilled because they all come from a Linux and open source background, and SQL Server 2017 supports all of that. So today, I'm happy to tell you, Rohan, that we are in production with SQL Server 2017 running inside of Docker containers on Linux.
Oh, perfect. So how did this change the experience for your developers?
Yeah, so after we solved all of those performance and scalability challenges, we wanted to make the software development lifecycle seamless for our engineers, especially as we were ramping up hiring. With SQL Server containerization, we were able to unify and streamline our software development process from our engineers' local workstations to our continuous integration pipeline, and even in staging and production in Azure.
Perfect. Do you want to show us with the demo?
Yeah, so let me show you how easy it is to set up a new local development environment with Docker and SQL Server. Okay. So I'm just going to use git clone to copy our code base from the cloud. And once that's done, it's just as simple as calling Docker Compose up. So while this looks like a simple command, it's doing a lot. It's building and initializing containers for our entire production infrastructure, from our API servers to our web servers to our Redis cache, and including SQL Server. So just like that, I have our full production infrastructure running locally on my machine. So this is our web application, and you can see it running right here. Isn't that amazing? So let's take it one step further and make a database schema change, because SQL Server containerization technology makes that really easy, because we can just quickly spin up and tear down these virtualized SQL Server Dockerized containers. So I'm just going to open up the code I just pulled down and just introduce a new migration script. And we're just going to put an alter table command in, commit it, and then push it back onto GitHub. And when I do that, it'll automatically trigger a run on CodeShip, which is our continuous integration pipeline, as you can see here. And if you just wait a moment, it'll start pulling down the Docker containers across the board, including the SQL Server Docker container from Microsoft's Docker Hub. So containerization support in SQL Server makes it very easy for us to have a consistent application environment across all operating systems, Windows, Linux, and Mac, and throughout the software development cycle, from dev to test to prod, giving us full confidence to ship bug fixes and feature releases to production on a daily basis.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Rohan.
Thank you. So thank you, Dean. I mean, you saw how, who would have thought like an entire CI/CD pipeline could be automated, where changes like this, could be submitted to production directly with a lot of confidence, right? And this is some of the innovation that we've done in SQL Server 2017 by making it so compatible by running it in container environments has enabled them. So we're really excited to get this information to all of you. Our partners are very excited about the innovation that we're shipping as well. Especially as we've come to Linux, one of the partners we work very, very closely with is Red Hat. And I'm pleased to announce there's special pricing, which is up to 30% discount for both SQL Server on Linux and for Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which you can sort of go and avail. So again, this is the momentum that's building up on the go-to-market side, which is pretty exciting to see. All right, let's sort of shift gears for a second. At Microsoft, we understand that pace of innovation is incredibly important. And this is one of the reasons why we've significantly invested in this principle of cloud-first innovation, which for us has really, really changed the pace at which we're releasing new value on our public cloud. How else does this work? SQL Server, the RDBMS, the relational database system, and Azure SQL Database, which is our flagship PaaS service for running relational databases in Azure, share exactly the same code base. So all the innovation that you're seeing released in SQL Server 2017 has been available in Azure SQL Database for several months, in some cases more than a year now. Along with this, we get near real-time feedback from millions of databases that are managed by Azure SQL Database, which helps us anticipate the kind of innovation that we'd need to add for the next 6 months, year, 2 years, et cetera. We are able to work very, very closely with customers like yourselves to actually innovate at a much faster cadence than ever before. And the key to our engineering efficiency is the fact that SQL Server is exactly the same as Azure SQL Database. Now, why is this important? A significant portion of our customer base is going through some form of digital transformation. I'm sure many of you are having these discussions within your organizations as well. Broadly speaking, there are a couple of pieces of feedback that we've heard very, very consistently from when we have these discussions, when we sit down and have these discussions with customers. The first one is really about, look, hybrid is the way of the future. There's several of our customers who come and tell us, for certain kinds of data, we cannot be all in the public cloud, and that has to be on-prem. And that's absolutely fine with us. This is one of the reasons why we keep innovating in SQL Server, and we'll always continue to do so. The other feedback that we heard consistently from our customers is, man, this transformation is so hard. As you think about it'd be great if we had like tools, the platform capabilities that enable us to sort of modernize our platform to the cloud, to Azure SQL Database if I'm a SQL Server customer, in a much more easy and turnkey way. And to streamline this journey, to make it very easy and economical as you create plans in your own organizations, I'm happy to talk about 3 different investments we've made which help you along this journey. The first one is a new deployment model in Azure SQL Database called Managed Instance. This essentially is exactly the same as the SQL Server instance you run on-prem. There's absolutely no difference, right? So when it comes to migrating your agent jobs, when it comes to migrating your 3-part name queries, et cetera, where you had some challenges in the past with Azure SQL Database, all of those have been addressed. And some of the early feedback that we've received from some customers, and you'll hear from one of them shortly, has been pretty amazing. The other area we are investing in is the service for database migrations. So you have Managed Instance, which gives you complete compatibility, and then you have the database migration service, which tries its best to essentially automate a lot of the processes when it comes to assessment, migrations, et cetera. There are multiple steps involved. Now, of course, migrations are hard. The service is not magical where it can just make everything turnkey, but it tries its best to make that entire journey of modernizing and migration, lift and shift in certain cases, as open, transparent, and easy as it can. And on the business side, I'm excited to announce this offer called Azure Hybrid Benefit for SQL Server. So if you're an existing customer with software assurance, you get a pretty significant discount on your SQL IP when you move to Azure SQL Database. I also want to mention that in MSIT and several organizations, more than half their applications are already migrated to, of the ones that they were trying to migrate, have already migrated to Azure SQL Database. It's already a great platform today. With Managed Instance and Database Migration Service, we are removing the hurdles for all complex migrations that we've heard. And with Azure Hybrid Benefit for SQL Server, in our humble opinion, it's an absolute no-brainer. If you love SQL Server, if you're an existing SQL Server customer who's thinking about modernizing their applications as a part of the digital transformation, there is really only one choice that makes sense. It is Azure SQL Database. Now, this is, of course, what we believe. Let me invite Chris Mitchell, the Vice President of Engineering of Caradigm, which is a GE healthcare company, to come and talk about their experience as they're migrating to Managed Instance and the Database Migration Service. Dean, Chris.
Good to be here, Rohan.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So Chris, tell us a little bit about your business and what do you do?
Yeah, so Caradigm was founded as a joint venture between GE and Microsoft, and now we're a GE healthcare company. We build global enterprise healthcare applications in population health management, data analytics, data warehousing, and identity and access management. I'm proud to announce that Frost & Sullivan recently announced us as their Product Leadership Award winner in care management. Our applications serve over 200 customers, 1,500 hospitals, 1 million end users, and 237 million patients. Our databases range in size up to 10 terabytes and can have up to 20 databases per customer. At the end of the day, our platform collects data from multiple sources, it aggregates it and normalizes it, and makes it available to the customer through integrated healthcare and analytics and care management applications.
So how's the experience been like? As you're modernizing, tell us the problems you're trying to solve.
Yeah, so being in a private cloud, it comes with a lot of challenges. First and foremost is cost. We have high capital expenditures, and getting that cost number down per customer is really hard. I get these massive invoices that come and look at things like my square footage in my cages and the amounts of kilowatts per hour that I'm using. And drilling those things down into one particular customer and understanding how I can tweak those in order to better get better margins on those customers is a big challenge. Also, it's hard to identify all the costs that go in there. I get really infrequent invoices for things like maintenance and support and stuff like that. They just don't happen that often. Or when I have to try to refresh my environments and figure out when to buy new hardware to put the old end-of-life hardware out of service, it's a challenge. Environment management and utilization is another big challenge. So I've got to make sure that I have capacity for my test environments, my dev environments, my pre-production environments, my production environments, and my hot swap disaster recovery environments. Most of those environments are unused a majority of the time. It's just hardware sitting there unutilized. The administrative load on my DBAs and my DevOps team is really high. They've got to manage all those environments. They've got to monitor them. They've got to patch them. They've got to upgrade them whenever we want new features. This work time that they should be doing a lot better stuff, right? And then scaling up or down really comes at a high cost. I like to think of it like I've bought an airplane and it's always running not at full capacity. When I finally get there to full capacity, I have to buy a whole nother airplane and then load balance those customers between the environments.
So, wow, that seems like a huge set of issues to deal with. So tell us, how is it going with the managed instance preview and the database migration service preview so far?
It's been really good, I think. So considering that we've been using pre-release software between two separate companies, it's with a managed service, it's been really successful. We've managed to get our data migrated with no problems at all. We noticed no data loss. The visibility of cost granularity, we've come up with a solution for that where we can have every customer in its own subscription and we can tell exactly which levers we can twist. If we have really important customers, we can put higher profile environments for them. Our environment utilization problem goes away. Now I just spin up environments when I need them. It also helps with testing because I can just clone my production environment and now I know it's an exact replication of what I'm pushing into. Or I can even just make that new environment my new production environment and turn the old one off. Ease of scale becomes a lot nicer. Now, if I have peak loads where I know I've just got a ton of data coming in and it comes in once a month or even once a year, I have to make sure that I've got that environment built to scale up for those peak load capacities. Now with the managed instance, I can just scale up that instance as I need it. I don't have to do it ahead of time and not utilize that capacity. Because it's a managed instance and a PaaS offering, it takes a lot of that load off my DBAs and the engineering team that are managing those environments today. It feels just like their local SQL. They're able to use the same tools that they're used to. They've had no problem ramping up at all. They get the upgrades for free. They don't have to go and apply them to every single customer tenant environment. They just happen, right? And they don't have that patching problems anymore as well. And then finally, our costs go down sooner. Your guys' prices drop all the time. And when I have to see those cost savings on reduction in hardware or storage costs now, I have to wait for that moment when I'm ready to buy that new airplane. That's when I recognize them. Now I can see them month to month as you guys recognize them for us.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. As you heard, GE Healthcare is going through their own digital transformation, how they're able to save costs by modernizing their existing SQL Server applications to Azure SQL Database Managed Instance and using the database migration service. Fantastic. All right, so we've obviously made it easy, and we're going to continuously keep working on this part to make it even more simple. But Azure SQL Database is a lot more than just that. It's the platform to build your relational database applications for the future. It's really the intelligence database that we've built for the new app developers. The service itself learns and adapts. We basically collect about 700 terabytes of telemetry data and growing every day. And this feeds into our query intelligence patterns where we'll really look across all the millions of databases that we manage, every query that comes to see if it regressed and how can we make that better automatically. And that really helps in making sure that you always have the most highly performant application without any investment on the side of the application developer. It scales on the fly. You can scale up, you can scale down without any downtime. And this is very, very critical as you think about optimizing the costs of building the application with your relational database. We have this feature called elastic pools, which allows you to group a whole bunch of databases which have separate peak times to optimize costs in a very significant way. We have customers already today who are building SaaS applications which have saved thousands, hundreds and thousands of dollars a month just by doing that. It's a great platform to build multi-tenant SaaS applications, as it relates to the other two pillars on the slide, which is it works very well with your existing environment, your existing tools, whether you're on the Microsoft stack or on the non-Microsoft stack, like I said. And the reason for this is all the investments that we've made in the developer ecosystem, in the admin ecosystem with SQL Server, apply equally to Azure SQL Database. So it's a great, great platform to build multi-tenant SaaS apps. The other part is security isolation, which is something that we've very deeply invested in. It's deeply integrated with Azure Active Directory. All the security features, whether it be transparent data encryption, row-level security, always encrypted, et cetera, that we've added to the core SQL product are available in Azure SQL Database as well. On top of that, there is a neat feature that is available, some of you may have heard of it, called threat detection, which again, based on the machine learning models that we've created based on the telemetry data of access that we get, which allows us to predict when your database is under attack with a SQL injection or something else. And it helps us notify you immediately so you can take corrective action. So overall, we are building a system, again, on the same foundation of SQL Server, which is your platform for the future. So a few key announcements that I'm very excited to share. In the preview, we have vulnerability assessment for GDPR. GDPR, I can imagine, is on everyone's mind. SQL Server has great features already that's built in for preventing security breaches. One area that we were not that strong was actually doing the assessment, best practices for security. And now we actually have an assessment tool that we've released. It works both with SQL Server and Azure SQL Database. Intelligent insights into performance. So we have integration that we've built with OMS, where you can now look, and based on the data that we collect, we are able to provide very, very precise and deep insights into performance regressions that you can manage very carefully. I already spoke about support for graph data that came into SQL 17. Again, that capability of features been available in Azure SQL Database for several months now. Adaptive query processing, again, the benefits in SQL 17 available in Azure SQL Database. And finally, we've invested very heavily in native scoring that I'd spoken about earlier, and integration with Azure Machine Learning, which has been pretty impressive to see. Now, this morning, you may have heard, if you attended Scott's keynote, he spoke about the Azure Machine Learning service, right? One of the things we are investing in, as a part of this whole making SQL Server a platform to build intelligent applications, is fantastic synergy between Azure Machine Learning and Azure SQL Database that enables data scientists, data engineers, and data developers who are building intelligent applications to very seamlessly collaborate with each other and produce great experiences for our customers. Now, to see how this works, let's look at a demo. Let me invite Sumit Kumar, who is a program manager in the Azure Machine Learning Services team.
Thank you, Roy. Hello, everyone. Very excited to be here to talk about Azure Machine Learning and Azure SQL Database working together.
Right. All right, good. You remembered your password. That's great.
So in this demo, I will train a predictive model in Azure Machine Learning Workbench. And then right from that environment, I will deploy the model in Azure SQL Database. And then I'll show an intelligent application that leverages that model to make a prediction on new data in real time. So to set context, here's the scenario. I am an intake nurse in the emergency department of an hospital. I'm looking at the queue of patients that have gone through the triage and need to be admitted. So on top of the queue, I have this patient, Anthony, and as soon as I hit the admit patient button, the machine learning model ran in the background and was able to reason over this data in real time, almost instantaneously, and it came back with the information that this person is likely to stay for 4 days. So now, equipped with that knowledge and the specific needs of this patient, I can make a more informed decision about which kind of bed and what to assign to this person and what staff do I need to assign to this. So now, let's take a look at how the model was actually built and operationalized. So this is the brand new Azure Machine Learning Workbench. And I, as the data scientist, am working in my familiar favorite tool, Jupyter Notebooks. And I'm writing Python code to do my regular stuff that I do, data processing, feature engineering. And then I train a model using random forest. And I leverage other functionality of Azure Machine Learning, like experimentation support and model management, et cetera, to iterate over my models. And when I'm happy with the quality of model and I'm ready to put this in production, all that I need to do is to execute a few lines of code right from my environment. And then this model gets written to this Azure SQL database. So that makes it very simple, very easy for me to collaborate with my data engineer and developer colleagues to build systems of intelligence. So now let's take a look at what's happening in the developer side. So this is the JavaScript code for the app, and I am in my IDE, Visual Studio Code, and I'm connecting to the same database. And I am making a stored procedure call, like I always do, to connect to databases. I don't have to pick up any new skills or learn any new thing, and yet I'm able to get the intelligence in my application. The only difference is that intelligence is built into the database. And just by connecting to that database, I'm getting the smarts from that model and making my application smarter. So now let's take a look at the tool that all of you use on a daily basis, SQL Server Management Studio. So this is the model that I just wrote from Azure Machine Learning Workbench. Note that I am not making any changes to the model. The model as is written from Azure Machine Learning Workbench is being used here. So as the data scientists iterate over a model and they have new data and improve the model, I, as the application developer, the data engineer, am able to instantly take advantage of that new model. So this is the stored procedure that is actually used by the application to make the predictions. So here, in this line, I'm just loading the model that was stored in a table. And this is the query in which I'm getting the new data for the patient from the application. And in this one line, I'm using the new T-SQL predict verb to make real-time scoring of the, so basically to reason over the new data and make predictions. This verb, T-SQL verb, takes the model and the new data and then makes predictions and passes the score back to the application. So because it is built natively into SQL Server, it is Azure SQL database, it is blazingly fast. And I can get millisecond order of performance. So in this case, it took me a few milliseconds to score this row. So because of this performance, I'm able to then get the experiences like we just showed, almost instantaneously. Let me do it one more time, this one. And I admit this new patient, and I immediately got this thing again. So no other cloud database can score predictive models this fast. So hopefully, this gave you a sense of how Azure SQL database works with Azure Machine Learning and other tools to help teams of data scientists, data engineers, and developers work together and build smart experiences to help you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sumit.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you saw, like as we're building multiple services in Azure, one of the things that we pay a lot of attention to is this deep, connection between services. And you'll see, one more coming up shortly. But it's, again, great to see that, all the value that we are adding to SQL Server is showing up in Azure SQL Database, and we're creating a platform for the future. The next, demo that I'd like to show you is support for graph data in Azure SQL Database and how that's helping Dynamics 365, which has made a huge bet. Dynamics 365 is an ISV that actually was built on SQL Server on their on-premise package. And as they did their digital transformation, they essentially created a SaaS service now that's taken a bet on Azure SQL Database. And there was one key business scenario that they were trying to solve, which wasn't possible before we had graph data support. So let me invite Kishan, who is the principal program manager in the Dynamics team, to come and tell us about how Graph is helping them.
Thank you for having me over, Rohan. How are you doing?
Good. So tell me a little bit about, about Dynamics CRM and the business you guys are in.
Thank you. Thanks again for having us over. Dynamics 365 customer engagement apps are essentially the core apps that we have more than 45,000 customers worldwide across different customer sizes. And these apps are used by our customers to kind of digitally transform their customer engagement processes. What that translates into is for them to provide unparalleled sales productivity and effectiveness, and to truly provide differentiated omnichannel customer service from call center to chat to bots to in-person field service, and to drive personalized engagement across different channels with their customers. We have, as you mentioned, taken on a fairly large and a strategic project, and that was to drive us from transforming ourselves, moving from SQL Server that was hosted and run in our data centers to Azure SQL DB. That's, of course, the service that you have. And there were multiple reasons for that, but the key kind of driver for us is we wanted to be out of the business of managing the infrastructure and be in the business of really helping our customers solve their business problems and providing the right capabilities. Of course, we're looking for other benefits as well, such as great performance, really snapping onto your very, very quick innovations. But the key, as I said, is to really move away from the infrastructure.
So how does the graph support in Azure SQL Database help you?
Yeah, great question. And one of the things that I mentioned earlier was really about this idea that we needed to do to provide very personalized engagement. And in order for us to do very personalized engagement, what we needed to do was to provide capabilities to our users, to make it very easy to segment their customers into different cohorts. And this segmentation was carried out based on the demographic or firmographic data. So that would include age, location, or would include things like size of the businesses if you're in a business scenario, or it would include behavioral data. This was a large amount of data that we needed to reason over to provide these capabilities. So that's why we use SQL Graph to have a really visual, easy to use, and a highly performant solution. So let me actually show that to you in action. So let's quickly switch to that. That's great. So what I'm quickly showing here is our segmentation solution. So let's tee it up a little bit. What we are looking at is a financial services scenario. And in the financial services, the customers, the banks or the financial services companies are typically trying to increase what they call the share of the wallet. So if you have customers, you want to sell more products to them so that they're more sticky with you. So typically what we are trying to do here is for a financial services company to target the right people. So the starting point of that is essentially looking at a segment where you have people already with a fairly high home loan balance. That's usually a sign of somebody being sticky, so potentially a very good target customer to go after to provide more additional offers. So what I want to do here is I want to run a typical marketing type offer for these, and I want to add them to a campaign, but I want to target a specific state so that I run a pilot and see how this works. So in order to do that, let me actually take all the people who have a home loan and also find out people who are essentially in the state of Florida. What you can see here is where we've used the graph in a very innovative way to essentially look at all of the relationships that we have, whether that's the customer, which branches he or she banks in, what products did he or she buy, what cases, and these are all essentially derived based on the business that's needed. A branch is something which is specific to a financial services company. If you went to a different industry, you might not have this. Now, at each point of time, I can go in, I can actually look at the data here, what are the different attributes I can query on. So let me actually go into the customer, and let me actually add an expression to say, hey, you know what, let's go and find all folks in Florida. And as simple as that, the business user adds this, and you can actually see that I have a combination. Now, perhaps I actually want to remove a few people because I want to also create a control group. And what I want to do here is I want to remove all folks who branch, let's say, in the city of Tampa. And that's as simple as that. Maybe I need to spell it right. And quickly, you can see that I've built out this ability to kind of go build out this intersection. Now, I can look at these expressions in a designer, or I can look at the query. But the key thing here is we provided very easy-to-use capabilities for a business user to reason over their data. In addition to the segmentation itself, The other problem that a lot of our customers are trying to solve is to have this through customer 360 view. And that's really a customer 360 based on data that's in a CRM system or a customer engagement system, as well as in other systems. So in a financial services company, I'm looking at my deposits or withdrawals. So these are typically coming from a banking system. I'm looking at kind of how my performance is and my entire journey of deposits, withdrawals, et cetera, and even including calls, which are things that are tracked in a different system. And this is really differentiated that we provided with the customer insights. Even here, we have a very nice visual interface through which I can see the relationships between this customer and the other branches and the cases and which segments I belong to. All of this really helps me drive a full view of the customer, something that I did not have before. And as I said, we picked SQL GraphDB because it provided us this very visual way of doing it in a very performant manner.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ravan. Thank you.
Thank you. So I hope that sort of gave you a sense of how Graph is enabling newer scenarios with Azure SQL Database. You know, one of the things is our commitment to choice. While we all love and desire SQL Server, we also know that there are several of our customers who've chosen other databases, MySQL and PostgreSQL in particular. And you know, from the choice point of view, as we think about that as a very key principle, we will do a great job in Azure to provide the best experience for our customers who rely on these databases as well. So it's, you know, we recently released these services in preview at Build. Today we are announcing the availability of the standard tier in preview worldwide. So please go and try it out. The initial feedback has been amazing. The foundation of these services is the same one on which Azure SQL Database was built. So all the good features like high availability, disaster recovery, security, intelligence, et cetera, are available. Some of them right now and some of them in the future in these two services as well. Very, very excited about that, you know, to sort of just take all the benefits that we are adding and extending it to other database platforms as well. Right, so we spoke about choice. The other big area, you know, when we have discussions with our customers is many of them are global organizations, and they want to build apps that their customers and their employees can access globally. One of the challenges with several of the global database services is that they have to compromise, they have to trade off consistency, availability, and performance, right? One of these things has to be given. And that usually lands up creating a big challenge for customers because what they're really interested in is having all these three as they build their globally distributed app. Now, what if we had a database that could do it all? And I'm super excited to mention that Azure Cosmos DB essentially solves this problem for our customers. It's the first database on the planet that's been designed to be globally distributed from the ground up. It supports multi-model data with the favorite API of your choice, like you can see on the slide. It elastically scales storage and throughput. This is critical to achieve the cost benefits that you want at the performance and the low latency of your application. The separation of storage and throughput is very, very critical. It has multiple well-defined consistency levels, all the way from if you want to build a consistent app to if you want to build a social app which relaxes its consistency. It has millisecond latency at the 99th percentile and financially backed SLAs, which make it the best globally distributed platform to build such applications. The other thing I'm excited to announce is Azure Functions is now deeply integrated with Azure Cosmos DB. What this enables is event-driven, serverless, planet-scale applications to be built that essentially allow customers to access their rich data everywhere. Now, to see this in action, I want to invite Andrew Potts, a solutions architect from ASOS, who have taken a bet for their globally distributed app on Azure Cosmos DB and the functions integration. Andrew?
Hi,
Good to meet you. So, Andrew, tell us a little bit about ASOS and what business are you in?
So first of all, thanks for inviting me. It's a real privilege to be here. ASOS is a fashion company, and we're a company with a mission to be the #1 fashion destination for 20-somethings. We're online only. We have no physical stores, so we engage our customers through our website, our mobile apps, and our social media. But we're also a company that works at great scale. We deliver to nearly every country in the world, over 200 countries. We currently have 85,000 products on our site, And typically, we're adding and moving 4,000 products a week. We have 15 million active customers, and we typically would get 100 million page requests a day. I work in the order management team. It's our responsibility to manage your order from booking it all the way through to dispatch to your door, and we also deal with the returns process. Last year, Black Friday, Cyber Weekend, a very busy time for us. We were processing 1 million orders every day, and we had 33 orders a second at one point through our services. So we operate at real scale, and the numbers are only going to get bigger this year. The challenges we have are that we're a global retailer, so we need to provide global scale and global consistency for our customers. So irrespective of whether you live in Australia or the US or the UK and Europe, you should get the same performance every time.
Wow, that sounds like a pretty big growth rate and a huge problem. So how does Cosmos DB and Azure Functions help you solve this?
Well, starting with Cosmos DB, all of our previous architecture was based on a private data center. So it was all IaaS. So the first thing we wanted to do was move to a PaaS solution. So all of that software updates, disk monitoring, SAN upgrades, all these things were taken away from us. So Cosmos DB as a document database did that for us. But there are other benefits to Cosmos DB that really suit ASOS as well. It provides global distribution, so going back to our customers and making sure we give them the best performance, we can provision a Cosmos DB in all the regions around the world, so we give them that real closeness. And I think you can see that on our diagram up on the screen. We can tune the consistency and the performance. There's always a sort of a trade-off between consistency and performance. With Cosmos DB, you can choose what suits you best for the scenarios that you have. Another important factor is the provisioning model. We pay for Cosmos DB on the RUs, the request units. That means we can predict what our performance load will be. We know when it comes up to peak, we can scale that up. When peak's done, we can scale that down. So we only pay for what we need. And for me, one of the big things when we were looking at Cosmos DB, the real game changer was the change feed. We build a reactive microservices architecture. We have lots of services listening to business events and being triggered from them, doing bits of work. With the change feed, we can subscribe to these events and we can pull off and do some work. It makes our life really easy. And finally, the announcement this week about Azure Functions is really good news. Even with the change feed, it does a lot of work for us, but we still have to worry about checkpointing where we are in the event stream. We have to worry about how many instances we've got. All this goes away with Azure Functions. All we're concerned about is writing a bit of code that does our business logic. We don't need to worry about all these other concerns. It makes our job really easy.
Perfect. Do you want to show us a quick demo?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I've got a little demo. It's a very simple demo I'd like to show you. Just showing you the change feed in action. So what we have is we're simulating orders coming into our system. So if you're on your mobile device and you're submitting your return, it hits our API, we save it straight into Cosmos DB. This code here is showing you how the change feed works with Cosmos DB. So as we're booking these return requests into the system, the change feed within Cosmos DB, within Azure Functions, will be listening to a change of documents. So we write our events as documents. This is going to trigger every time it sees a change to that Cosmos DB that we're monitoring. And all we're going to do is pull out the information and save the information as a new event into a different database. So I've got a client here. It's a simple console client, and I'm going to use it to submit a load of requests. So I'll fire off 100 requests there. That's the equivalent of 100 people requesting a return. And if we come down here, you can see immediately that the Azure Functions picked up this change to the collection it's monitoring, and it's processing those returns. So it's a very simple example. What I'd like to do is on Thursday, we've got a breakout session. We're going to go into greater detail, show some more code around Cosmos DB, the change feed, event sourcing, which is a pattern we use, and finally Azure Functions.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you saw this. This is another great example of two Azure services coming together to provide customer value. Now, we've spoken about a lot of the operational databases. We have a great offering in Azure for analytics and big data. And this slide, it's a busy slide, but it captures the various stages of ingestion, storing of data, preparing and training the data, and serving, creating the model and serving for BI and analytics. And there's options that we have both from the open source side and the proprietary work that Microsoft has done in each of these. So let's quickly go. The first thing is we are announcing a new release of Azure Data Factory. Azure Data Factory is the one that's essentially used for ingesting data into our stores in Azure. It's been used by lots of customers, and we got some feedback that the time series-based limitation for triggers, for orchestration, et cetera, was not providing the right flexibility, so we've changed that with the new release. It has data movement connectors, 30 of them that are natively built in, and most importantly, it essentially allows you to use your existing SSIS packages to do data integration across on-premise and the cloud, or between Azure SQL databases and the VMs running SQL Server in the cloud by natively hosting these packages with no changes inside Azure Data Factory. So fantastic news there. The other open source offering that we have for managed Hadoop is Azure HD Insight, as you all may know. The two key announcements there is the interactive query using LLAP, again, which is an open source standard for interactive queries in Hadoop, is made generally available. The OMS integration with HD Insight to detect performance problems, operational issues, et cetera, is now available in public preview. It supports, support for open source big data frameworks like Kafka and Spark, which makes it a very, very compelling solution as compared to managing these Hadoop instances either on-prem or in a private IaaS cloud. And finally, I'm very, very excited to announce Azure SQL Data Warehouse has a new compute-optimized tier. You may know Azure SQL Data Warehouse has a petabyte scale, massively parallel processing architecture where we have, for analytics, where we essentially have separated compute and storage, where you can independently scale them. It's very cost-effective. It's a truly elastic cloud data warehouse because it allows you to completely pause your compute and not pay when you don't need it. It allows you to scale up and scale down within seconds. And one of the key pieces of feedback that we heard was for extremely large data volumes, customers wanted a solution where they could actually get very, very high performance out of the Azure SQL Data Warehouse. And this is where we are launching this support for compute-optimized workloads. Architecturally, what we've done is we are moving towards the Generation 5 hardware in Azure, which has more than several terabytes of local SSD data, which is connected through NVMe. Effectively, means the I/O performance rates are extremely high locally. We are creating column segment caches on these nodes, and it allows us to essentially run big data analytics and Power BI integration, et cetera, on Azure SQL Data Warehouse significantly faster than ever before. And with the unlimited columnar storage that this cache helps us provide, we can write back data into Azure storage, which is not hot and accessible. So the cache essentially contains everything that's most relevant at that point in time. It's a durable cache as well, so in terms of failovers, it makes it persistent. All right. And finally, of course, you've processed your data in Azure SQL Data Warehouse, but you need to serve it for decision-making through Power BI. And Power BI is a tool that's already extremely popular in the enterprises. I'm sure most of you are using it. You may have missed the announcement that we released the Power BI report server, which allows you to run Power BI on premises for cases where, for security, compliance, et cetera, you cannot move the data to the cloud. It's a great benefit for existing SQL Server customers because it's a part of your license. And finally, let me invite Nishant to sort of come up on stage and do a demo that puts all of these things together, the entire big data analytics pipeline to create customer value. Nishant?
Awesome to be here. Of course, aren't we all excited about this big data and how it enriches our data warehouses and the rest of the data estate? Now, let's quickly dive in to see a demo over here. I'm going to dive into my app over here first. And as I see this, for worldwide importers who are a retail organization, they've created this snappy experience for me to look at. They've actually gone ahead and personalized this page to myself, bringing in weather and social information and events data and all of that stuff. I'm just going to go ahead and select one of the shoes, and look at that. They've even pinned up my social media and understood my color choices and optimized it to that over here. Now, I don't see $100 value in these shoes, so I'm just gonna look at that a little further, but I think they're intelligent to determine that I'm hesitant over here, and in real time, they're even offering me promotions. What's more, they're offering me promotions to go pick up in store so that they can optimize their inventory. How about data warehousing coming together over here? Now, I'm excited about this. I'm just going to go ahead and do this and check it out using AI experiences built in as well. But this is the consumer experience and the snappiness and the enrichment of the data that's coming through. How about some of the business user experiences over here as well? Now, as we look at this, this is a Power BI dashboard embedded inside of one of their line of business applications. And you can see structured and unstructured data coming together. I can go ahead and look at sentiment by products. I'm looking at men's clothing, which has a very high positive sentiment, shown by that large green bar on that graph. Now, I want to see how I can convert that into more sales. So I'm going to dive into a campaign dashboard and see if I can launch a campaign. But which campaign to launch? Can I actually go ahead and get some machine learning inputs to that? Well, yes. Given the big data and the data warehousing environment, I can even go ahead and scroll to my recommended campaigns that's coming from machine learning. And I see here that it already identifies that men's clothing is one of those candidates. And if you offer 10%, you can get an 82% ROI coming back from it. Now, this is all good. But don't we want to look under the hood and see what made this possible? I'm going to go ahead and dive into the solution architecture of this entire application over here. There are three major components that I want to talk about. One is how all of the structured and unstructured data is being pulled into a data lake of sorts, in our case, Azure storage. Now, that pulling is actually happening using Azure Data Factory and the new benefits that we've just announced that Rohan mentioned. What's also important is it's humongous amounts of data, close to 450 terabytes. To compute upon it, you have those specialized analytical engines like Azure HD Insight, which leverages the best of open source analytics and Apache Spark in this case to go ahead and structure upon it, clean it, and curate it. But the best part, how you enrich your existing data warehousing with all of this curated data and put it into the massively parallel petabyte scale SQL data warehouse that we have. And the most interesting piece, it's all inside of Azure over here. You can see the resource group, you can see all of the assets, and you can dab into each one of them over there to see how they're performing and even scale it with the sliders. Over to Rohan.
Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you sort of coming and showing how our entire big data and analytics stack and pipelines stitch together to produce a great result. Well, thank you so much, Nishant.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. There you saw the value of the big data pipeline that we have, ingesting data through ADF, landing in one of our data lake stores, HD Insight, processing it through Spark, and serving it into Power BI through our massively parallel Azure SQL data warehouse. It's a fantastic story. I hope that sort of gave you a good glimpse of all the innovation. There's a lot more that we couldn't cover today. We just sort of focused on the main points that we've added to the modern data estate from the Microsoft Data Platform. We truly believe that your innovation, speed, and agility will be gated by what you can do with your data. And this is where the modern data estate that you bet on becomes very, very critical. Satya and Scott this morning spoke about digital transformation and how that is going to make our lives better. It is going to create opportunities for everyone on the planet. At least that's what we hope happens. That's really at the core of the very mission of Microsoft. We believe we in the data platform group at Microsoft believe that the data estate, which is built on the data platform of the tomorrow, essentially is at the very heart, at the very core of this digital transformation. You all are the leaders of the data groups inside your organizations. You all have to lead and change the game. It is your time to lead. It is your time. Our promise to you is we'll always be standing behind you, supporting you, and rooting for your success. Thank you all for attending this session and knowing about the data platform. I hope you have a great week at Ignite. Thank you.